So Secret of the Mimic has finally been released, and I think I can speak for everyone when I say that this game is way better than anyone expected. Everything from the story, the gameplay, the characters, the music, the horror is the best we've seen in this series, in my opinion. This game is so good, in fact, that I'm gonna say that it is the best FNAF game in the series. You heard me right. Not best Steelwool game, best game in the series. At least in my opinion. And I really have to applaud Steelwool for their sheer craftsmanship of this game. You can really tell they poured everything they had to this game, and it really paid off. But I can make a whole video about how much I love this game and what I love about it, but that's not what this video is for. Because as amazing as Secret of the Mimic is, there's something much more important to talk about here. The lore. And oh boy, is this game full of it. In fact, there is so much lore that I can't even cover it all in this video. And it's not even all figured out yet. But I'm here to sort through what I can and see what Steelwool is trying to tell us with this new game. Now before we get into the lore, I'm going to quickly summarize the main game and the 3 endings you can get. So if you want to skip that section, then just go to the timestamp shown here. You start the game as Arnold, a Fazbear Entertainment employee who's driving from his last job when dispatch tells them that they're going to need him to do another job for them at Murray's Costume Manor. You arrive at the location, dispatch gives you a data diver so you can navigate the facility. When you approach the building, it looks abandoned and rotten, but you go in anyway. You make your way to the office when dispatch tells you why you are there. You are there to receive the blueprint of an endoskeleton that can mimic anything it sees. You then explore the factory, encountering the mimic in several different costumes and barely escape certain deaths several times. This is the main gameplay of the game. You eventually get executive access on your data diver and get the blueprints from Edwin's office and head back to the security office where dispatch tells you to give him the data diver. This is where the game branches out and you can get the different endings. The first ending, or the bad ending, is obtained when you give dispatch the data diver and drive home. On your way home, dispatch calls you and it's revealed that the dispatch you were speaking to the whole game wasn't the real dispatch and was actually M1 mimicking his voice and tricked you into giving them the data diver. You get fired for this, and then it's revealed that M2 was in the van with you and presumably kills you and stuffs you in a prototype Freddy Fazbear suit in the basement of the facility. We'll get into the difference between M1 and M2 and the Freddy's location in a second. The second ending is obtained by activating parachute.exe instead of giving dispatch the data diver and heading deeper into the facility. This is where we find the Freddy's location that I mentioned earlier. It's a recreation of the FNAF 1 layout with the classic animatronics plus some extra Springload suits. This is the big Fazbear project that was mentioned several times in the game, and the project that Fazbear Entertainment bails out on last second. In the office of the location, we learn that Fiona, Edwin's wife, is not only M1, but is inside the Mexis machine from Ruin. M1 tells us that she wants us to get Edwin to fix M2, the version of the mimic that has been trying to kill us all again. So we go further and end up at Murray's house, where we find tapes of David's, who is Edwin's son's, birthday, and this is where we get confirmation that M1 is Fiona. We get to Edwin's office, and apparently there was a huge fire or explosion there. We don't know for sure Edwin's fate, but he's definitely no longer around based on the tape we find in the office. We go to the computer and install cradle.exe into our data diver, then we get chased around the burning facility by M2 and just drive off. But M2 catches up to us, crashes our car, and steals our data diver. The final ending is the quote-unquote good ending and is obtained by collecting every collectible in the game and playing through moon.exe to get the glitched permissions on our data diver. We use these permissions to access David's bedroom, which is very similar to the FNAF 4 bedroom. We use the storytime device in the bedroom to calm down M2 to his David form, and then install cradle.exe into him so that he permanently becomes David and deactivates. So that is the entirety of Secret of the Mimic, but what does it all mean? Well, let's start with what this game tells us about the beginning of the series. In one of the logs we can find in the game labeled Spring Locks, it's revealed that MCN was probably commissioned by Fazbear Entertainment to make the original Fredbear and Spring Bonnie Spring Locks for Fredbear's Family Diner. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Mav, what are you talking about? That's not what the note says at all. It says Murray made the new Spring Locks for Henry that aren't dangerous like we know Fredbear and Spring Bonnie suits are. So he couldn't have made the original Spring Locks. Well, you might be right, but you have to really analyze what the note actually says. It does say that Edwin made the new spring locks for the diner, but I think that this implies that Edwin made the original spring locks, then Henry saw how dangerous they were and asked Edwin to make new ones that weren't as dangerous. It goes on to mention the water damage, but to me, this sounds like Edwin saying that despite the fact that the spring lock suits suffered some water damage, they still work. Not that the spring locks were designed not to fail under water damage. Though I wouldn't be surprised if these spring lock suits were safer because we ride in several of them in the game and they don't go off at all. Two more points of evidence to add to the claim that MCM helped create Fredbear's Family Diner is that 1, Edwin calls Henry Hen, which I feel like unless you're really close friends with someone or you help them out with something, you wouldn't just call a business associate a nickname. And 2, throughout the factory we can see several Fredbear Family Diners posters and memorabilia in the facility, and we know that Edwin liked to give tours of his facility to sell his products. So why wouldn't he promote the popular local attraction that he helped create in order to help sell his products? Then, seen as Fredbear's was a massive success, Fazbear Entertainment would continue to work closely with MCM to continue commissioning things for MCM to make for them. Which brings us to Chica's Party World. At one point during the game, the Mimic is wearing an old Chica costume, which we later find out was used in the Chica's Party World location. Fazbear Entertainment likely commissioned MCM to make this, and apparently it was super popular and then just crashed at one point. There's also a note saying that Fiona designed Chica, which is a nice little detail. And then the third big thing we know Fazbear Entertainment commissioned Edwin to make was the Big Fazbear project that I mentioned earlier, which we later find out is the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. In this prototype location, you can see the 4 classic animatronics and 4 spring-locked suits. Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, a dog named Bub, and an alligator. I've seen some people saying, where are the unwithered animatronics? Shouldn't it be the unwithered animatronics here? Now let me clearly state this for people who still think this. It is most likely that the unwithered animatronics are not canon, and I don't think they ever were. This was confirmed in the Week Before book, it was talked about in FNAF 2, and now it's triple confirmed here. Fazbear Entertainment opened the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and it was up and running around 1985. The classic animatronics were the first and only ones here. Then, the MCI happened and the place got closed down. Then, Fazbear Entertainment wanted to open a new location with different looking animatronics, so they tried refurbishing the classics to give them a new look, but they came out so ugly that they scrapped the idea midway through and made the toy animatronics, and then they kept the animatronics in the back room to use for spare parts, which is why they are withered in FNAF 2. Phone Guy literally tells us this during his phone calls.
By now I'm sure you've noticed the older models sitting in the back room. Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now. The idea at first was to repair them. They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology, but they were just so ugly, you know, and the smell. So the company decided to just go in a whole new direction and make them super kid-friendly.
Then, after FNAF 2 closes, we can see in the newspaper that Fazbear Entertainment keeps the withered animatronics so that they can use them to reopen in a smaller location, which brings us into FNAF 1, where Fazbear Entertainment restores the withers back to their classic look, which Rouse/Phone Guy says in the Week Before book, which we know is pretty certain to be canon to the games. Obviously, you can have different opinions when it comes to theorizing about this game, but I personally just don't see why people still think that the unwithered designs are canon. Even if they are, they're canon for like like a couple days or something before Fazbear Entertainment just throws them in the back room and being ripped apart for parts. There's just so many things that suggest that they were never actually functioning for a pizzeria. Anyway, small rant aside, the Fazbear Project was Edwin's last hope at restoring the company, because at the time, everything was going wrong for him. He was getting a bunch of lawsuits, he was losing money, and employees were leaving him to go work for Fazbear Entertainment because of William. William Afton, being the snake that he is, was getting Edwin's employees to tell him all MCM secrets and then leave Edwin to come work for him. And then, just when he was relying on the Fazbear Project to save him, Fazbear Entertainment backs out last second. Not only that, but after they back out last second, and Edwin basically has nothing, William buys everything from MCM, including the very land itself. Which brings me to my next point, and is very much a theory and never stated in the game. This theory is from Dawko's video, so you might have heard it already, but I just wanted to expand on it a little more. So we know that Edwin's house is located on a hill right next to the factory. The house has a series of tunnels connecting to the factory and its facilities, and the house itself has a child's bedroom that's somewhat similar to another bedroom we're familiar with. Does any of this sound familiar to you? It's William's whole setup. His house is located on a hill. His house is connected to an underground series of tunnels and facilities, and his house has a bedroom very similar to David's bedroom. Now, when I initially heard this theory, I didn't really believe it because it almost sounded too good to be true, but when I used a line of thinking that has proven to be very effective before, thinking from the developer's point of view, there's more things that make it seem like this has to be the case. If I was Steel, why would I put the FNAF 4 toys in David's bedroom if I didn't want the players of the game to draw a connection to it? And in the one of only 2 messages we get from William, why would Steelwool specify that he owns the land of the factory? They could have said anything else like, oh, I own all your costumes, or oh, I own all your inventions or your factory. But no, they specifically say that William owns the land. Something else to note is that we learn a lot of how different characters were created from this game. I went over already about Chico's Party World and Freddy's Family Diner, but it seems like we get some solid evidence of the creation of the mediocre melodies here. We see that Mr. Hippo and Happy Frog were part of Monty's Jug Band, and we also see that one of the elephant costumes has a pretty similar color scheme to Orville the elephant. This ties into a message we see in-game about someone named Stan running off with some designs from MCM and starting his own restaurant. This is most likely Stan from Stan's Budget Tech from Pizza Sim, which is why we see them selling the mediocre melodies in that game. We can also speculate that Henry and William stole the ideas of Mr. Helpful and Big Top in order to make Helpy and Music Man. We also see that Roxy originated from MCM in addition to Monty, and it gives more context as to why some of Roxy's areas and security breach were paired with a Western theme when her thing was supposed to be racing. Finally, I'm going to be talking about which ending I think is canon out of 3. Using process of elimination, we can go ahead and eliminate the secret ending with David. This ending is most likely not canon because we see the Mimic and Ruin still being aggressive and not mimicking David, and it's the only ending where Arnold lives and we don't really hear from him in the whole series, so it's most likely that he died. Now it's hard to decide between the bad ending and the escape ending. On the one hand, in the bad ending, we see Arnold get stuff into the Proto Freddy in the Fazbear Project location in a very similar way to how Glitch Trap kills the player in Help Wanted. To me, this is the Mimic learning how to do this for the first time and shows how he will recreate this killing method years later in the game. And then on the other hand, in the escape ending, the factory burns down, which would tie into the theory of William using to land to build his own house and using the underground tunnels. And in this ending, the Mimic walks off with the data diver. However, something I still don't understand about this ending is why M2 would even want the data diver. He wants it so much that he even spares Arnold just to take it and leave. As far as we know, M1 or Fiona is the one who wanted the data diver so she could fix M2 and have it go back to mimicking David. So why would the mindless, rage-filled M2 spare the one person he was trying to kill all game in order to just take the data diver and leave? The only thing I can think of is that maybe M1 has David deep down inside of him and maybe wants to fix himself using the data diver. That being said, I do think that this ending is the canon one. While we may not fully understand it now, it feels like it's setting up the pieces for it to be revealed to be canon later on, rather than the bad ending where Arnold dies and that's basically it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of the game? What are your theories about it? Do you agree or disagree with the things I said in this video? I'll make a part 2 of this video talking about the Murray family and the lore implications we get about the future of the series. I'll as well cover anything new that comes up that's worth talking about, so stay tuned for when that video releases. Until then, I'll see you next time.